Okay, so I don't know what Toei Animation was doing during the Cell Saga, but whatever they did led to a lot of movies. So let's see what's the first one we're looking at today. See, while Cooler's Revenge did its best to separate itself from other Dragon Ball films, this one does the exact opposite. Return of Cooler, other than having the most confusing title for a sequel, takes what was a pretty awesome villain and then comes up with a completely stupid reason to bring him back. When they try to explain it within the film, it makes almost no sense how they did it or even why. Cooler goes from this intimidating, awesome villain to a very generic and weak one. I'm not invested in this character anymore, nor his motives. Everyone else I just feels kind of flat and boring, which is weird considering that this is Dragon Ball. Even at their worst, these characters are still fun and interesting to watch. This is easily one of the most forgettable movies. The animation is just off, nothing exciting happens, and the fights themselves aren't that memorable. Every aspect of it is just kinda boring and samey. Nothing we see here is new, and even down to the animation, it just feels recycled. And even then, this has a very weak ending, not knowing how to end the film and just giving it another Goku Ex Machina. Even for hardcore Dragon Ball fans, this is one I would recommend skipping, especially if you enjoy Cooler as a villain. This does absolutely nothing to make you want to watch it, and it's just kinda flat. This gets a 3 out of 10. Super Android 13 is a movie that just kind of exists. It's kind of hard to talk about this one because there's nothing that really makes it stand out. Super Android 13 starts with Dr. Gero's computer releasing 2 new androids to kill Goku, and that's where the story stops trying. The rest of the film is one gigantic fight with all of the Super Saiyans fighting against the androids. After a really cool shot of everybody going Super Saiyan, the film just goes to one gigantic cliche. There's the Piccolo saving Gohan cliche, the Vegeta saving Goku cliche, and the Goku Ex Machina, ever present here. Even the writing can get weird at times, with Android 13 having a weird philosophical moment that just doesn't fit Dragon Ball.
Free will. Pitiful humans. War, segregation, hatred. Is that what you've done with your free will, boy? Don't you lecture me with your $30 haircut.
It's so out of place and awkward in this universe that it just feels wrong. And the fight isn't the most interesting either, but like every other fight, it does have its moments, particularly toward the end. Android 13 is also a very generic villain, not doing much to differentiate himself from any of the other androids we've seen. Overall, this is a really, really skippable movie, but it isn't insultingly boring like Cooler. I would say it's worth at least one viewing for a pretty cool Goku Ex Machina, but there really isn't anything memorable to go back to afterward. It's very basic and can sometimes just be a waste of time. This gets a 4 out of 10. Okay, so we're going from one of the worst Dragon Ball Z movies to some of the best Dragon Ball Z movies. And one of my favorite characters in all of Dragon Ball is easily Future Trunks. I feel that he has the most tragic backstory out of all the characters in the series, and overall, he's just awesome. And unlike a lot of the other characters that we see, he's very kind, yet ruthless when needed. History of Trunks shows him as a kid in this dystopian future. We see what made him the character he is and why he acts the way he does. Instead of just hearing a tragic backstory, we see it. We feel it. When people tell me that Dragon Ball has always had terrible stories, and they have, I point to this film as an excellent example of storytelling in the series. While at times it can be a bit predictable, it really shines through the usual Dragon Ball cliches, while still playing into exactly what I love in the series. Like Bardock, it has a lot more emotion than many of the other pieces of Dragon Ball media, and it's an absolute blast to watch this story unfold. And this movie holds one of the most emotionally charged moments in the franchise, with Trunks finally becoming a Super Saiyan, what the entire movie was building toward. As a kid, this is what made me stop thinking Dragon Ball was just stupid kid stuff. This scene hits you hard, and I still feel that this stands out as one of the best moments in the franchise. I absolutely loved this movie, and it made me love Trunks even more as a character than I already did. This one, I give a 10 out of 10. So far, the theatrical release for the Cell Saga has been very, very weak and cheap. But honestly, that's okay, because it seems like all of their money and time went to this movie. Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan. Out of all of the Dragon Ball Z films, this is usually heralded as one of the greatest. And honestly, I agree. But that doesn't mean that it's absolutely perfect like a lot of people seem to expect. It's a really funny story, with the script being better than usual for a Dragon Ball Z movie. From the art direction to the writing and the way the characters are even animated, it just comes off as a bit more mature than the other films in the series. The pacing of the film is really, really good, and the characters they introduce are really fun. But however, one of my major gripes with the movie is the title itself, because it completely kills any tension the story has. A majority of the movie is our characters trying to search for the legendary Super Saiyan, but because of the title, we know exactly who it is. So much of the movie is based around trying to find him. And when they introduced Broly, we're just like, he's right there. This movie could have made the middle 20 minutes super interesting if they just made it the legendary Super Saiyan rather than Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan. But once the slow part of the story is done, the story's pace ramps up. Broly's sheer presence rightfully owns the spot of one of the favorite characters for fans. But I won't say that's because of his character development. While he's the biggest threat that any of the Z fighters have ever faced, his motivations are very, very weak. He has two major qualities to him: screaming Kakarot and being generally unkillable. And yeah, when you break it down, Goku crying being the reason he's a giant Super Saiyan is very, very dumb. But I will defend it, saying it somewhat works for the narrative. We see that Super Saiyans are beings of pure rage before they can learn to control it. So at a young age, when he has that kind of power within him through genetics, a baby crying is the worst thing that's ever happened to him, and naturally it did set him off. I can understand the unrelenting hate for Kakarot, but that still doesn't mean it's a good motivation for the main villain of your movie. And unlike his future movies, he does have some aspects of character outside of that. The dialogue he has is so threatening and so cool until it devolves into him screaming Kakarot, which is when it gets all weak and stupid. The film constantly ramps up, showing the amazing strength of this Saiyan to the point where it's one of the few times that our heroes just cannot measure up. This was one of the few times I felt it was a challenge for everyone involved. And it was this one guy rather than the usual group that they fight. And that's why I love Broly. But at the same time, his immense power is a double-edged sword. I felt the ending was just a giant cop-out because he is so strong. It has some of the best fight scenes of the entire franchise, but because he's so powerful, the writers don't have a way out. It ends with one of the worst Goku Ex Machinas ever, and it's not a fulfilling end to this terrifying character. I really enjoy this film mainly because of the character interactions themselves, not necessarily because of the story we're told. If you're trying to get someone in to watch the show at all, this is the film I'd recommend to people just because it captures the true essence of what Dragon Ball is about. This gets a 7 out of 10. Bojack Unbound is an interesting film just because of its nature. It has a great art style that most Dragon Ball Z films don't have, with a lot of great set pieces and some great action from all aspects. The only real downside is the villains themselves. They're not at all developed or interesting. They just kind of show up and start fighting. Hell, all of them are essentially nameless, and Bojack just kills one of his own for no reason. And even though he's dead, we still managed to get a Goku Ex Machina in there because why the hell not? But the positives do far outweigh the negatives for this film. Like I said, the set pieces lead to awesome looking visuals during the fights, and the fact that Gohan is the main character makes everything awesome. At this point, there hasn't been any real chance to focus on Gohan as the main character of anything, really, and he really is one of the coolest characters in the series. And we see the awesome ability of the Super Saiyan 2 before it gets outclassed. The screen presence that it has is just chilling, similar to when Goku became a Super Saiyan for the first time or when we saw it in Cooler's Revenge. Boring villain aside, I still really enjoy this movie and constantly go back to it. To me, this gets a 7 out of 10. Hey guys, thanks for watching! If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe! If you want to see more reviews, then click the playlist to see my other stupid opinions. Alright, see you next video!